Welcome to Screw the Commute, the entrepreneurial podcast dedicated to getting you out of the car and into the money. With your host, lifelong entrepreneur and multimillionaire, Tom Antion.
Hey everybody, it's Tom here with episode 61 of Screw the Commute podcast. This episode is on outsourcing, or how to get some work done for $1.70 an hour with no payroll taxes. How does that sound? And I hope you didn't miss episode 60 with the super duper sexy boss, Heather Havenwood. And she's a prolific marketer. You'll see insights into how she runs her business. All right, today's sponsor is the Distance Learning School, the Internet Marketing Training Center of Virginia. Don't even think about retraining yourself or sending your kids to college until you check out our webinar on higher education. I do not want you wasting hundreds of thousands of dollars and putting yourself and your kids under crushing debt. We'll have the webinar in the show notes at screwthecommute.com, or you can just click on the nav buttons for free webinars. All right, let's get to the main event. Why should you outsource? Well, there's a lot of reasons, and one, of course, is the price. I've paid as little as $1.70 per hour and at most $2.50 per hour. And another big benefit was I got out of payroll taxes and benefits. I mean, this can, these payroll taxes and benefits can add like 30% or more to your cost of hiring people. And it's also lets you keep you and your other employees focused on more productive things that only you and they can do. Now, in many cases, depending on where you're located, you could order work at the close of business in your time zone, and it's just the beginning of the day in your outsourcer's time zone. So basically, you order some work, and it's waiting for you when you get to work the next morning. Now, one thing I will warn you about are brokers in this industry. I've not met one yet that wasn't simply a money-hungry exploiter. Now, first of all, I don't mind their business model, which is running big warehouses where they host sometimes hundreds of people doing outsource work. They mark up the hourly rate and provide you an outsourcer. My problem with them is that they'll say and do anything to get your account and then lie about the abilities of the people doing your work. I had one guy begging me to try his service, and he knew I could promote the heck out of it if it was good. He gave me his absolutely best people, and they still sucked. He gave me 5 different people, and they all sucked. I can only imagine the people he was giving to the customers that didn't have the reach that I have. I suggest hiring direct, which you can do from various websites where potential outsourcers list themselves and their abilities. And they're pretty honest people, and I've found their claims of what they can do are way more accurate than the broker's claims. So I'll tell you about a webinar you can watch. You can watch it later, and I'll tell you about it later, where you can find these websites. All right, let's talk for a moment about delegation versus outsourcing. To me, delegation is giving tasks or duties that I may or may not be able to do myself to somebody in my company. Outsourcing is giving a task, again, and maybe I can do it or maybe I can't do it, but it's given to somebody outside my company. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I will make one nasty remark about delegation before we continue, all right? I think the concept of delegation has been the ruin of many small companies. You have these holier-than-thou consultants and speakers telling you that you should only do what you're good at and delegate everything else. Well, this is ridiculous advice unless you're filthy rich and you don't care if you overspend for everything in your business. Most people that take that advice delegate themselves right into the poorhouse. My idea is that if what you are good at is making you broke, well, maybe you should rethink that idea and gain some skills in the area you aren't good at. Delegating everything that needs done in a small business or startup is ungodly expensive. Plus, since you don't understand all the things you're delegating, you'll mostly spend way more than you should because the people you're delegating to will know that you're clueless and many will take advantage of you. You should only delegate things that you know what's involved in doing them, how long it should take, and how much it should cost overall, with payroll time and all the productivity issues of the employee doing the task. And yeah, I know some tasks are too complicated to learn the details, but you can always check around and talk to trusted advisors that aren't profiting from the task, okay, to give you the kind of the Cliff's Notes of the scope of the project and how much it should cost. An example would be programming for an app. I don't know how to even begin programming an app. But I have people I could call that could tell me what is involved in my app idea, and I could research it online long before I talk to an app developer to get prices. That way, I would know if the price quoted was way out of line. All right, one other thing I'll address before I get into actual outsourcing is the idea of a virtual assistant, or also known as a VA. I mean, virtual assistants can be good, but in my mind, they're way too much money. See, I don't want to step on toes because I'm sure many are very professional and honest virtual assistants out there. But to me, it's just too darn much money. You could have 3 to 5 geeks working for you, building your worldwide presence for the cost of one virtual assistant, and that's at USA prices. Also, many of them charge by the hour. Now, do you really think they're going to keep super accurate control of the hours actually spent working on your stuff? Come on, let's be realistic. What if the school calls about their kid being sick or in trouble? What if their friend calls suggesting they have lunch? I mean, to make a living, they most certainly have other clients and everything gets intermixed. I mean, are you their most important client when they're conflicting deadlines? I'm just saying, you most likely will not get the value. Now, if their child gets sick at school and they drop your deadline work to go to school, hey, I totally understand that, but you can't have your business interrupted like that. Yeah, I know I'm going to get yelled at by the professional virtual assistants, but my job is to help you be profitable, and I don't think they are the way to go. Plus, one other thing, I can guarantee not one of them in the United States anyway is going to let you put a full-time webcam over their shoulder that you can monitor while they're supposed to be working for you. Okay, let's get to outsourcing. And by the way, I have a great webinar on this at tomantionwebinars.com. I think it's the last webinar before the comment section. The only place I would outsource to, and I believe is the best, is the Philippines. And here's why. They speak better English than I do, okay? And they're generally very honest people. They don't want to steal your business. In fact, if they mention to their friends that they're thinking of starting a business, their friends tell them they're crazy. However, they think it's really cool to have a foreign boss. And the skill level can be extremely high and the prices extremely low. Now, the downside is that you must know the cultural differences or you will fail miserably like I did before I learned them. It's really worth it to take the time to watch that webinar at tomantionwebinars.com. And it's by a guy that knows the culture, and he describes many of the cultural differences that will make or break you. I'm going to give you a few of them right here. The 13th month. Now, in December, in the Philippines, it is customary to give an employee who has worked for you a year an additional month's pay. If they worked for you half a year, then an additional half month's pay. And when you are considering hiring a person, you say something like, I know about the 13th month, you just remind me when it's due. Now, this allays one of the Filipino workers' worst fears. When getting hired by a foreign boss, they're afraid they won't get paid. You bringing up the 13th month makes them feel like you are okay with money. Now, another thing you face in Asian countries is the concept of face. Frequently, an Asian person does not want to say they can't do something. There have been many instances where an otherwise excellent Filipino worker just disappeared with no notice. I learned that the employer gave them a task they didn't know how to do, and they were so embarrassed to admit it, so they just disappeared. To overcome this, you have to promise them you will teach them to do anything you want them to do, or if it's something technical that you don't know how to do, you must constantly reinforce the fact you expect them to ask you questions so you can teach them how you want things done, and that you welcome questions and you really must nurture them so they never feel embarrassed and disappear on you. And there are lots more things you'll learn at that webinar at tomantionwebinars.com. Okay, how do you be successful at this? Well, there are lots of things to consider before outsourcing work. The first is, which tasks you want to outsource. I've outsourced lots of bulk writing, and I say bulk writing because I may have needed a bunch of blog posts, and it was easier for me to farm them out than for me to rough them out myself. And I still carefully read each one because even though they speak great English, it's not exactly like the same as most US, UK, or Canadian people would say things. I feel comfortable outsourcing writing, although in the beginning, here's a good tip for you, I would use a plagiarism checker like Grammarly before I would totally trust that they were composing original material. I would also give them small jobs to start just to be sure I'm happy with their work before I depend on them for a big project. And I have no trouble outsourcing graphics work and research work. I'd give anyone access, or I wouldn't give anyone access to my server until they had proven themselves over a long period of time. Although I would give them web work that they would either send me or we put it up here on this end, or some of them might have a server they can put it on while they're working on it so I could review it. I wouldn't be opposed to have a test site available to them that if they destroyed it accidentally, it would be no big deal. I personally would not give them access to any funds or bookkeeping stuff. It's just not a good idea to let people in faraway lands have a look at your finances. You don't want them telling one of their underworld buddies where to look and how much they'll find if they decide to hack you. Now, just don't put out work that would have major consequences if they screwed it up, because you'll not be able to travel there or hire a lawyer there to recover damages. So, I mean, heck, you can barely do that in the same country you're in. Next, you want to decide how you will work with them. Skype is a common way. Lately, Zoom.us has gotten great reviews. And all of them let you share so you can see what they're doing and they can see what you want them to see on your computer. You also have TeamViewer and Join.me or there are other options. All right, we got to take a brief moment for our sponsor. Now, did you ever wonder how tens of thousands of people like me sit home, earn legitimate money, and don't have to listen to a boss or get up and fight traffic every day? Well, now I just made these figures up, but in the time you've spent commuting to a job, you could have raised 3 families, become a professional figure skater, and walked the Appalachian Trail 7 times. Now, if you want to learn how guys like me have the time to think up stupid statistics like I just made up, it's because we have online businesses. You'll learn how to have an online business or get a high-paying job at the only licensed dedicated distance learning school in the country, probably the world, the Internet Marketing Training Center of Virginia. Check it out at imtcva.org. IMT, Internet Marketing Training Center, C, VA for Virginia.org, or check it out in the show notes. And keep in mind, just because it's in Virginia, it's distance learning, so you can be anywhere in the world and take classes. Okay, let's get back to outsourcing. Now, you got to give clear instructions and be patient. And this might be hard for some of you impatient bosses out there, and you might have to curb your super fast mind and bossiness in exchange for a loyal, low-priced worker. Now, you have to be extremely clear on what you want. You have to give examples. You have to speak slowly and make sure they understand what you're talking about. Remember, they don't want to say they don't understand. That's their nature. You must spoon feed them and keep reconfirming that they understand. And don't just go just because they say they do. They need to demonstrate they understand your instructions. And you have to be very kind and patient. And any hint of meanness or dressing them down because they don't understand means you'll have to start all over, because they will disappear. Now, this is worth it in the long run to spoon feed them a little bit in the beginning, because especially if it's a repetitive task, they'll crank it out for you maybe for years to come. So it's worth a little time in the beginning to help make sure they know how to do it. All right, now if you don't have full-time and ongoing work, you can skip all the cultural stuff and go straight to freelancer sites like Upwork, used to be elance.com, or even Fiverr.com, Fiverr.com. I've had great luck at Fiverr, and some people haven't. I kind of think the ones that had bad luck didn't play the Fiverr system correctly. You don't go into it thinking your first $5 spent will be a home run job. Yes, I've had plenty of those, but I don't expect that. I expect I'm going to have to hire several different people to get my job done. And really, I'm not exaggerating here. I could probably hire 100 different people to do a job and not pay as much as one professional firm to do the job here in the U.S., all right? So if you're willing, now, here's another thing. If you're willing to pay a little more for graphics, 99designs.com lets you describe your job and tell how much you're willing to pay for it. And the more you're willing to pay, the more people that will send you graphic samples of your idea, and you can pick the one you like the best, and then that person gets the money. Now, when choosing a bidder, you don't want to automatically choose the lowest bidder. You need to look at the overall picture and always check if the person has lots of reviews for similar work to yours. Now, whenever you're working on a project, make sure you stay in communication with the person, and whenever possible, look at interim parts of the project so you don't wait till it's all finished to find out it wasn't what you wanted. Another thing is the ownership of the work should be decided in writing and before the project starts. You should stipulate that the work is work for hire and make them sign an agreement so they know they do not get royalties or any ghostwriting or graphics credit. And you can find sample work for hire forms online. Now, I do need to suggest you have an attorney create it or review what you found online. Just make sure they know the only rights they have to the work is the agreed upon amount of money you pay them. All right, speaking of payments, many of the online services handle this so that both parties are protected. It's kind of a mini escrow service where you deposit money, which is held by the site until you are happy with the work. Then they release the money to the freelancer. Sometimes the freelancer will offer to go off the system and work for you directly. Now, they are doing this to get rid of fees at the freelance site, and also it could be to get out of the protections the site has for you. That means they can turn out poor or zero work, and you have no recourse through the freelance site. Also, as a sidebar here, when buying any larger ticket or more expensive items online, be very wary if someone offers to use an escrow service where they give you the link to it. It could be a very legitimate looking service that's totally fake and under their control. You send the money to the escrow service, and your money, the escrow service, and the vendor disappear and open up under other names to repeat the scam. Sometimes you'll be required to pay part of the total fee. Let's say it's 1/3 when they are halfway done and 1/3 when they're done, and final 1/3 if you request any revisions. And there's nothing inherently wrong with this, so long as you have a copy of the work as they go. So if they don't finish it, you don't get stuck with nothing to show for your 1/3 down. Now, what about after the project? Well, it's very common that you will have questions or concerns after a project is technically complete. Once a freelancer gets their money, frequently they're on to the next project and forget all about you. Now, unless you paid for after the project support, they don't really have an obligation to you. But one thing you can do when picking a freelancer is look through their reviews and see if you notice any comments of how helpful the person was after the sale. That person should get extra points with you when you are trying to choose the best person for your project. All right, how about project management software? Well, for larger projects and multiple members on a team, you may want to use a project management software and teach all the team members how to use it. Now, I don't really have a recommendation because I don't really do large projects requiring multiple team members. I suggest you just Google the term project management software and look for legitimate reviews on Google and YouTube. Okay, so in conclusion, for a cheap price and a little bit of learning curve on cultural differences, you can get help that could really, really skyrocket your business. All right, so remember to check out the webinar on outsourcing at tomantionwebinars.com. Visit our sponsor, the Internet Marketing Training Center of Virginia, and get the skills to have a high-paying job or start your own business or both. So this has been episode 61, one of my Monday trainings. See, every Monday I do a training on some topic that has either made me or saved me a lot of money. On Wednesdays and Fridays, I do interviews with other successful entrepreneurs. So if you like what you heard, there's loads more of it here. Please subscribe. You can get it at iTunes or any of the major podcast directories. And you can go directly to screwthecommute.com and listen to all our episodes. And please subscribe and leave us a review, though, if you can, at iTunes. We really appreciate it. It helps out the show. All right, we'll catch y'all on the next episode.